What's up, guys? It's the Bluebloods, and we're back with a very special episode. Yes, we have video this time. Yes, we have a special guest. Brandon's traveling from the holidays, but we have Clemson play-by-play Don Munson back with us to talk all things Clemson football, talk the big game this weekend against Ohio State. So thanks for joining us, Don.
Absolutely. Glad to have you, or glad to be on with you. Appreciate you having me.
For sure, for sure. Well, we have you this time coming in right after a win this time. We had you last time right after Clemson and LSU last year, but as many experts predicted, I'm sure you predicted, I know me and Brandon did, Clemson wins the ACC. They get back in the college football playoff. Can you speak on kind of what's the difference between this team, last year's team, and some of these national championship teams that we've seen these past few years come out of Clemson?
Well, I guess, the major difference between this year's team and last year's team is probably just experience, because we had so many guys that did come back and were part of this. Obviously, you get Travis Etienne back, which a lot of people, okay, after this, is he going to come back? Is he going to go? And he had a decision to make, and he decided to obviously stay with the program. So that was kind of a huge recruiting deal there by Coach Swinney, but he always seems to have that guy or that group of guys that for whatever reason he can talk back into staying here on the Clemson campus. So that would be one of them. Obviously, the another year of maturation for Trevor Lawrence, and what he has been able to do at quarterback. Missed a couple of games because he was out with COVID protocol. It affected this team. We've had some other injuries, obviously, that have cropped up throughout the year, primarily on the defensive side and particularly at wide receiver. Though we've been playing without really our three main weapons at wide receiver.
Right.
Justin Ross has been out, Frank Ladson, Joseph Ngata. Those were the three guys coming out of spring ball that we would told you, okay, those are going to be the go-to guys. And it turns out that a couple of veterans and Amari Rogers and also Cornell Powell have really stepped up for the receiving corps so far this year.
Right. And, I think we talked about Travis Etienne coming back is just, I think I was even shocked about that, Brandon, everybody. But I mean, even people like, I don't know if you want to talk about him some, Braden Galloway for me has popped off on screen. He doesn't get as much play time as, say, someone like Amari Rogers, but I feel like he didn't have the hype coming in that someone like Amari did. Can you speak to how Clemson always seems to find these diamonds in the rough, and when they get on campus, Dabo Swinney and the staff develops them to probably better than just about any program in the country?
Well, Galloway was a guy, if you go back and remember last year, he was suspended for the entire year except for the two games that he was able to get into in the playoff situation. So he was able to play in those, made an impact in both of those games. So he came back, and I thought I wouldn't call it an outstanding year, but he really had a solid campaign. He's a threat, certainly at tight end for Clemson. Davis Allen, though, the other youngster at tight end, though that's been a really good 1-2 punch for Clemson at the tight end spot. But Galloway is one of those guys. And, I think that what happens is that we get caught up too much, fan base, media, all of that, into, all right, a kid is a 4-star or 5-star, whatever, coming out of high school. You expect him to step on a college campus and make an immediate impact. Well, that's kind of like saying that you expect an 18-year-old kid to come out of college and step into the professional ranks and make an immediate impact. Well, that just doesn't happen. And so, that's one of the things that Coach Swinney has been really, really good at is finding those guys that they can develop, give them 2 years, 3 years in the program, and then turn them loose. And you're right, Clemson's had their fair share of those. And that's part of what if you ask Coach Swinney what this program is all about, he will tell you, we are a developmental program. We're not a program that's going to be full of one and dones or any of that kind of stuff. We want guys to come in here and develop fully as a complete person, as a whole man, get their degree. And Clemson's been very, very good at doing that.
Right. And, I think the big difference this year, too, is, we saw Clemson suffer that one loss in South Bend. And I feel like a lot of experts, I know on the podcast, I was very vocal, is not as much as Brandon, but I didn't put a lot of weight into it. I was like, when you have a player like Trevor Lawrence out, when Mike Jones Jr. is out, and I believe Tyler Davis was also out of that game, you had so many big pieces missing. How much weight did you put into that? And did you see the ACC championship playing out like it did, where when Clemson's fully healthy, it's going to be real hard to beat that team at full strength?
Well, and James Skalski was another part of that piece of on the defensive side that was out for Clemson. Here was the greatest stat I thought going into the Notre Dame game for the ACC championship. and this I give credit to the folks at ESPN. They were the ones that were able to find this. When James Skalski and Tyler Davis are on the field together for Clemson defensively, they give up an average of 1.2 yards per rush. All right, that's
That's
outstanding.
crazy.
Without them on the field, 5.2 yards per rush. So, I think that is enough said right there. When you're giving up 4 more yards per rush without 2 guys on the field, I mean, it goes to show you they mean everything. And both of them played extraordinarily well against Notre Dame the second time around.
Oh yeah, and we just talked about developmental pieces. Tyler Davis was probably the least talked about piece on the D line coming in last year for Clemson, and was arguably the best defensive lineman on the team last year and this year, even with people like with all those, was it Miles Murphy coming in as a true freshman? He's been outstanding. I mean, he played big time, especially against Wake Forest and stuff like that. But I want to get to some comments from Dabo, especially in the news recently about Ohio State and them not being in the playoffs. I was vocal on the podcast. I thought Texas A&M and Cincinnati should have been in over Ohio State because of the number of games. We have disagreements on that, but what is your take on Ohio State? And are you on Dabo's side here that yes, they shouldn't get in? I mean, I get the number 11 rank. That's tough to rank them outside the top 10, but do you think they should have gotten the playoffs as well?
Well, let's start with the part 2 of that question first and why he ranked them 11th. All right. So he had been saying all year long that he felt like, all right, you need to play games to be eligible for the playoffs. And so what he did in his mind was, all right, if you have played 9 or more games, then I'm going to say that qualifies you for his top 10 of the poll. No, notice he didn't say for his top 25, but for his top 10. So he took those teams that had played 9 or more games and ranked them 1 to 10. And then obviously Ohio State was the best of the rest. They played 6 games. So what I find interesting though, is that not a lot of people are talking about, well, what about those coaches that ranked Ohio State in their polls ahead of Clemson? And what about those coaches that didn't have Ohio State in their top 4 and outside their top 4? Now, whether you believe Ohio State should be in the playoffs or not, that's not for you or I to decide. That's for the committee to decide. And so, it kind of is what it is. Do I think that they maybe got a little bit of a pass because of who they are and what they are as a team and the talent that they have on the team? Probably so. I would tell you that I would almost guarantee you that if Clemson had only played 6 games and had gone 6-0 this season in 2020, that probably they would have been in the college football playoffs. So, but this is just, it is what it is. It's a miracle. I mean, it's a miracle we got a college football season in here in 2020.
Yes.
I think you owe a lot of that credit to Trevor Lawrence and the guys that got together on the telephone call and started that hashtag "We Want to Play" movement back in August. Because I don't know, without those 22 or 23 guys on that telephone call, I don't know that we play college football in 2020.
I don't think so. And I've been vocal on the podcast. I think the ACC, Big 12, and SEC should get loads of credit for getting the season in, because they kind of were the 3 conferences that said, okay, we're going to stick through this and we're going to play 9, 10, 11 games. And they all did it. I think the SEC and ACC only canceled, I think, less than 10 games apiece that weren't played. So outstanding job by them. But some other comments from Dabo that we talked about on the podcast was about Trevor Lawrence and the Heisman Trophy. The Heisman finalists were out. We have Devontae Smith, Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Trask, and Mac Jones from Alabama. Do you think he deserves the Heisman? And if so, why?
Well, and here's, again, let's get down to the Heisman criteria. I don't know that people really read the Heisman criteria, because it's the best player on and off the field. All right. So there's 2 parts to this. There's not just one part to this. We've already, just with what we just talked about, I don't know, without Trevor Lawrence, that we have, Mac Jones wasn't involved in that. Devontae Smith wasn't involved in that. Justin Fields, yes, he was involved in that. But, so that's one point right there that separates him, I think, from the others. And I think if I were just to ask you, who's the best player in college football?
It's no question Trevor Lawrence, and it's by leaps and bounds, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what my opinion is as well. Now, do I think he's going to win? No, I don't think he's going to win. But and it's kind of a shame but He's not worried about it. None of us should be worried about it. He's not it. It's not a me thing with him. It's a we thing with him. And so he really
Right.
wants to see his team succeed. Let's see if they can take care of Ohio State. Let's make a move to Miami. Whoever is waiting there, see if they can get beyond them. I will tell you this. All right. So say Trevor beats Ohio State, and then Alabama or Notre Dame, but say Alabama is sitting there waiting on him. Say he beats Alabama. All right, so all of a sudden he will have beaten Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama. He'll finish his career 36-1 as a starter at quarterback. Now, what are you thinking about him? Is he the
Yeah.
best ever to play? I mean, it'll be the best record ever as a college, Power Five quarterback ever.
Right.
So now what do you think about him as a Heisman Trophy winner? That's why the Heisman Trophy voting needs to be delayed as well. It needs till all games are finished. They need to stop with the window of it being all right. You can start voting. It's no. They need to stop all that. You get with technology the way that it is today. You get 2 or 3 days to vote, and it happens after all games are finished and complete.
I love that idea because I think voting opens up at a ridiculous pace even before the last week of the season.
Right.
So someone has a good game in week 9. How does that weight more than having a big game in the playoff game? And I think you're right. If we would have waited Trevor Lawrence the way Clemson's playing right now, I think that we have a different story. And if Trevor doesn't, come down with the COVID virus, we could be having a whole different take because if he plays Boston College, who at that point in time was playing very good football. Boston College was a team I think was overlooked. And then you get Notre Dame on the road, which personally I picked Clemson in that game, even with Trevor out. I think Trevor being there is a whole different story. I think we could be having a different conversation. I think those 2 games really, really hurt his resume for this year at least.
Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But it is what it is, and welcome to
Yep.
2020. Thank goodness we're almost to 2021.
You are not lying. And I want to bring up we actually talked about this on the podcast. It was your tweet about Travis Etienne and comparing him to Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, and these legendary running backs like Reggie Bush. I was on your side. I was like, this is a good thing. I think Travis Etienne is the most well-rounded running back in college football. He can catch, he can kick return, punt return, he can run. Would you put Travis Etienne as arguably a top 2 or 3 running back in college football history, or are you just saying he has the potential to be there?
I think he has the potential to be there. I think if you go back and you really, if you're a student at the game and you have to understand, that the game goes back before the start of the 4-letter network.
Right.
That it goes. Like Jim Brown was ridiculously good at Syracuse, and he wasn't just good in football, but also as a lacrosse player. Then Ernie Davis, who followed right behind him, may have been better than Jim Brown in both of those sports. All right, and unfortunately, the leukemia got him
Right.
and stopped his pro career. So we'll never really know what he would have developed into. But a guy like Earl Campbell, for instance, that I grew up with in my ilk. I'm 58. We 59 in February. So 60s, 70s football as a kid growing up for me were just about everything. I mean, there were some great running backs. Tony Dorsett, man, if you never saw Tony Dorsett, if you never seen any of his college tape, you need to go back on YouTube and pull up some of the highlights of Tony Dorsett. Because it was ridiculously good. So where
Right.
he is and where he is moving to as far as Etienne, I would, even though I've said that Trevor Lawrence is the best player in college football. I've said several times this year that Travis Etienne is the best player on this football team. And as I sit here and talk with you, I can make an argument for that. I could absolutely
Right.
make an argument that Travis Etienne is the best player on this Clemson football team. And to think that both he and Lawrence have been side by side now for 3 years, it's incredible.
Right. So about Travis Etienne, I feel like this year there's just been all these extenuating circumstances, no spring practice, no really not even a lot of fall practice. And statistically, it hasn't been his best year this year. Is there a chance Dabo Swinney convinces him to come back? I mean, we saw Demarcus Bowman, the backup running back, 5-star, he transferred out. Do you think Travis Etienne could be one of these guys where it's like, how did he stay 4 years at Clemson when this kid could have been a first round pick, probably even last year?
No, he's going.
He is
He's
okay.
going to step out. He's going to be, in all likelihood, he'll be the first running back that'll be taken in in the draft this coming spring, and so he needs to go. I mean, he's to
Right.
that point. I think just from taking care of his family, he's graduated from here at Clemson. I think that he's done everything that he possibly can, and to see the way that he's developed from the time that he made that opening splash as a freshman on that long touchdown run at Louisville to where he is now, being the complete player as receiving wise, carrying wise, blocking wise, which fans don't ever want to talk about
Right.
that aspect of it. But he's the complete back, and he will be a whoever he goes to on the next level. Believe me, they're going to appreciate Travis Etienne. The great thing is that Etienne again, and Sweeney has managed his touches throughout the season. He is extraordinarily fresh as he enters the playoffs.
Yeah, and he seems to be very healthy too. He doesn't. I mean, I don't think he's had. He doesn't get hurt as much as we see some running backs, and he's not beat down like you see some running backs like Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin came out after 2 years with almost 800 carries,
Right.
and he
Yeah.
does
I
not
mean,
have that. He doesn't have that wear and tear. So let's get to this upcoming game this weekend. It's a huge game. I'm so excited for this game. I think Notre Dame Bama is in the 2:30 slot. This one's in prime time. I'm pumped for it. What are some position battles, some areas that you're going to be watching and focusing on this upcoming weekend in New Orleans?
well, the first one again won't be very sexy. What I'll be focusing in on is the interior portion of both offensive lines, center, two guards. Those group of three on both sides need to play well and need to play better because
Right.
both teams really do want to establish some type of run. Now, both teams are going to creep up in the box and they're going to try to take away the run. But you've got to be able to run the football in some way, shape, or form, which then also on the flip side of that means that your defensive ends can't get caught going too far upfield. I think that's what happened the first time around that Clemson's defensive ends against Notre Dame, that first game around, they got too far up and allowed Book to run the football and allowed him to
Right.
make open spaces and get into and extend plays and make things either happen with his arm or with his feet. Well, if Clemson's defensive ends do that against Justin Fields, then they're going to pay the price for that because he'll take off and run 20, 25 lickety split. And even though he
Right.
hadn't thrown the ball as well, believe me, he'll find targets downfield and be able to hit those guys downfield. So those are the areas and that same is also true for Ohio State because if their ends now get too far upfield and they allow Lawrence to step up in the pocket or step to his left or his right and find a little bit of lane, you know that he can take off and run with the football, but he's even more dangerous with his arm. So
Right.
those areas right there are things that are probably not popular areas to watch, but those to me I think will kind of be deciding factors in this game.
Right. And so going into this game, Ohio State's strength of their defense tends to be their front four, really. They have a lot of experience on the D line, but that back end has been picked apart by we saw Indiana. Michael Penix threw for almost 500 yards against them. Do you think Clemson focuses on the passing game? Because I mean, they are explosive at times. Those deep routes. I don't think anyone in the country throws a better deep ball than Trevor Lawrence. Do you expect to see them lean more on Trevor Lawrence's arm than maybe even Etienne's legs in this game?
Well, Clemson's going to take with whatever Ohio State defensively will give them. So I think both you and I can agree, and just about everybody that's watching this will agree that Ohio State's not going to let number 9 beat them. All right, they're
No.
not going to let ETN run the football. So they're going to do everything they can to force Clemson to throw the football. So, but it's a little bit like choosing your poison. And
Right.
same thing defensively for Clemson. It's choose your poison with what you want Ohio State to do. Ohio State wants to run the football, but with those wide receivers and that quarterback that they can absolutely light you up through the air if that's the way that you're going to make them beat you. So, both of these teams come down to this. They both want to do the same things offensively. They both want to do the same things defensively to you. So it's going to be who can make better plays, who can make more plays. And it's really
Right.
funny because you look at both offensive units, and both offensive units are kind of dotted with first and second round draft picks aplenty on both
Mhm.
sides. And so it'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
Yeah, and everyone's talking about the revenge factor for Ohio State. And I want to get your opinion on this. What is the message kind of around Clemson's team? Because I feel like it's more of a revenge game for them in a way because everyone's putting their win last year on the refs and bad calls and missed opportunities for Ohio State. Is there any noise within the program of let's prove that we are the better team here and that last year wasn't a fluke, more so than Ohio State's revenge game.
Well, I'm not inside Ohio State's building, but I can tell you this going back to the spring, even in their building, it was Clemson. The focus was Clemson, all the clocks, the countdown. It was about Clemson, Clemson, Clemson. Here at Clemson, it's been about Clemson. So it's
Right.
really funny to see how both teams are approaching this, because I think it is a revenge tour for Ohio State. I don't think that they can hide that. I think that that's definitely, but for Clemson, it's, you know what, we're focusing on ourselves, and it's that old John Wooden philosophy from back in the days at UCLA when he won 10 championships in 12 years. Is that, Wooden used to always say, I'm not worried about the other guys. I'm worried about my guys and how we play and
Right.
how we execute and go out and take care of business. And so that's kind of the way that I have seen it around here at Clemson. Is that, I was at practice today. It's, they're worried about themselves. The old John McKay great line when he was a coach at Tampa with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and after a bad defeat, the writer asked him, Coach, how do you feel about the execution of your team? And he said, I'm in favor of it.
Yep.
If that'll be, I think, around here, if Clemson doesn't execute very well, I think Coach Sweeney will be very, very disappointed.
Right. And so, like, one last question before I get your final thoughts on the game. We saw Auburn, I went to Auburn. I was really hoping we get Venables. We did not. I'm okay with Harson. And we saw Tony Elliott. He's been a candidate for multiple jobs. Venables will probably be a candidate for every single Power Five job opening until he eventually takes one. What can you speak toward about them being so committed to the program? Because you never see it at Bama every single year. The offense and defensive coordinator leaves. Florida, LSU, you see that year in and year out. How does how does Clemson keep that family environment so strong? And why do people like Tony Elliott and Brent Venables, who get offered the top jobs in the country, decide to stay at Clemson?
Well, it is. Clemson family here is very, very real. I mean, it is. Recruits will tell you that. Graduates will tell you that. Staff members will tell you that. I will tell you that because I have experienced. Clemson family here is very real. And it would be, I'm just telling you, it would be very difficult for Brent Venables or for Tony Elliott to walk into their household, to look at their wives and children and say we're pulling roots and we're headed off to something else. Julie
Right.
Venables, Brent's wife, loves it here. The two girls, which you never hear anything about. So he has two young daughters that are younger than the two boys who obviously are playing football right now
Right.
for Clemson. But those three women, they love Clemson. I'm just telling you, I don't know if you're married or not, but I'm married for 36 years. All right. My wife loves it here. And she has often told me that, yeah, you know what? If you move, you can come back and visit your daughter and me anytime that you want. Okay. So and the same holds for Tony, his wife, Tamika, and the two boys, two young boys. As a matter of fact, I think they're like, I want to say 4 and 6 right now. It would just be very difficult for them to go into that household and look at their wives in the eyes and say, we're pulling up roots and we're going. The time will come. I mean, it is going to come. It'll come when it happens. But and they're both paid very well and that
Right.
kind of stuff. So they're not going to take just any job. It's
Right.
not going to be just any job. They're going to take the one that they feel like really does fit them and feel like that the people behind them are going to help them out once they get there.
Right. And I thought Tony Elliott's statement was, I've never seen someone deny a job more strongly and more passionately than Tony Elliott denied any rumors with Auburn. He said it was unfair to the players, unfair to the recruits, unfair to the coaches there. I mean, like, if I'm a recruit and I see that, Clemson's immediately top of my list anywhere. But last
And he
question
doesn't have
here.
an agent.
Yeah,
Tony
right.
doesn't have an agent. All right. So I don't know where it started
Mhm.
and how it came out, but somebody I think just kind of threw it out there and to see if it stuck to the wall, and it flew all over Tony Elliott. That was for sure.
Yeah, it did. I was impressed with how he handled it. But last question here is: do you think Clemson escapes New Orleans and gets to Miami for the national championship this weekend?
I would certainly hope so. I don't think there's no guarantee to that.
Right.
You've got to go down there and you've got to earn it. And guess what? you don't have to win by 24. You just have to win by a point. All right. So this
Right.
right now is just survive and advance. One of the great things that my fortunate, having been in the playoffs every year since 2015. Obviously, you won a couple. We've lost. We've lost more than we've won once we've
Right.
gotten into the playoffs. But you just got to take it. It really is. It's once you get to this point, every play matters. Little details really, really matter. And if you're fortunate enough to have a shot once you get to Miami, then once you get to Miami, that's I think when you can really start dreaming about, all right, because the opportunities don't come all the time. I mean, they just don't come all the time. So go down there and make the most of your opportunity. But you got to earn your way there, and it will be very, very difficult for Clemson to get by this uh, motivated Ohio State team, I guess is the way
Yes.
they play. They're plenty motivated, no doubt about it.
Right, right. Well, we definitely appreciate you giving us a bit of your time. Guys, check out all of Clemson's broadcasts. Don't listen to ESPN, go listen to the Clemson Sports Network over there. I know you have a basketball show coming up, so good luck with that, man. And I'm looking to have you on. I picked Clemson for the national championship on the podcast, so I will be reaching out after that trip to Miami because I have Clemson this weekend. I have Clemson over whoever they face. So I'm hoping to have you back on as the 2020 national champions.
That would be fine with me. Anytime that you need me, please reach out. So
For
always going to spread a little gospel of the Clemson Tigers, though. Go Tigers.
There you go. But guys, you guys know where to follow us. We'll be back later this week with another episode. But for right now, we're out.